Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Decentralized Voices podcast. I'm excited to have Johnnatan Messias as the guest for this episode.
Hey, Daria. Hey, everyone. Also, great to be here. Yeah, looking forward.
Johnnatan is a research scientist focused on decentralized technologies, including DeFi, DAOs, and mechanism design for the apps. From this episode, you will learn about the challenges of airdrops, ethics in crypto research, and the differences between theory and practical implementation of blockchain innovations. Johnnatan, please give a short overview of your professional background.
Yeah, of course. So, I'm a research scientist working at the Max Planck Institute in Germany. It's really a top and prestigious institution for computer science research. I have a vast record of publications in terms of scientific papers, right? Published and also presented my work in many industrial as well as academic venues. Other than that, I also had the opportunity to work as a research scientist at Meta Labs, ZKsync, as well as I interned at Chainlink Labs, as I have a bunch of experience on data science. So basically that's the things that I do.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. So, can you share more about your role in the blockchain space? What do you do as a research scientist?
Yeah. So my research focus, it's basically on decentralized finance, autonomous organization, let's say DAOs, right? My main job here is to identify what is going on the blockchain space in terms of how users are actually, accounts are actually using initial transactions, right? And other than that, also I focus a lot on the airdrop designs, whether platforms are achieving their goals, right, in terms of launching an airdrop. Also related to decentralized autonomous organizations or decentralized governance, right, as known as DAOs, whether there is any unfair distribution of voting power as well, which can basically drastically impact the true notion of decentralization in these decision-making systems. Other than that, of course, DeFi, for instance, front-running, back running, sandwich attacks, what we call arbitrageurs, right? Yeah, so I analyze all these kind of things. So this is really an interesting research, right? Because you have the chance to understand what's actually going on, and then with that you can propose some changes to the protocols, which benefit the whole community as well.
Yeah, thank you. You're the first researcher on my podcast, and it's really great to discuss like these topics from more scientific and research side. So, what do you like the most from the decentralized technologies and blockchain?
Yeah, this is a really interesting and, of course, sometimes even philosophical question, because there are many things on this space. I'd say that the idea of having everything decentralized, where anyone can join or leave at any time, at their desire. This is fascinating. This is really a distributed way of making decisions. And you have some rules that you have to follow, usually implemented through some smart contract or some consensus mechanism. This is really beautiful. For instance, with these applications, we have a censorship resistance as well. So it's basically, I cannot censor people, or at least I should not be able to, right? Although there are some small caveats. Other than that, imagining the decentralized governance where we can give people the decision-making power to propose changes and vote on changes on the protocol. So instead of having these stakeholders getting together on a meeting to make these decisions in a dark way, we have everything transparent, right? So this is really beautiful. Additionally, thinking about financial inclusion as well, since everyone can use, everyone can deploy anything, this is a really, really beautiful concept that we should actually advocate for. I find this ecosystem and these decentralized technology systems really fascinating. And of course, there might be some issues, right? And that's why we researchers are here. So we analyze,
Yeah.
we propose changes, right? So this is something interesting to keep in mind.
Yeah, it sounds great and very inspiring.
Daria, right now there are more than 1 billion people without access to the traditional banking system.
Yeah.
So imagine how catastrophic it can be for those people if they cannot get a loan, they cannot, whatever, they don't have a bank account. But with these decentralized ledger technologies, blockchains, it can easily, assuming by some definition of what is easy, right? They can have their own wallet. They can start, transacting among people within their community, and for the first time, they have access to this, in this case, decentralized banking system where they can send or receive money and payments from everywhere, or, at any time, and to whoever they want to send this money to, and without needing to disclose their identities as well. Of course, in some countries, this might be some thing that the government would like to pursue, but yeah, I'm not gonna touch in that. But think about those people who have maybe even they don't have IDs, so this is really perhaps unique thing that you have to be part of this digital world, right?
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, it's really, it sounds really impressive, and it's everything that we can get using decentralized technologies. So, can you please share about the differences between theoretical advancements and the practical implementation in the blockchain ecosystem and like blockchain technologies?
Yeah, so this is a great question. So the thing is, one thing I like in this space is that, even, I'm not a theoretical researcher, but of course, from time to time, I like reading these more theoretical papers, right, describing and formalizing these beautiful concepts and ideas as well. But the thing is, our area actually it's evolving so fast, which means that whenever someone come up with some foundation theory or anything, formalizing something, is really a matter of perhaps days, so that those things will be implemented and tested in practice, right? Researchers also run some simulations sometimes as well. So this basically gives us some idea whether it's gonna work or not, right? In theory, yeah, of course, there are gonna be some proofs, right? Again, I'm not a theoretical researcher, but this is fascinating because, it can easily get deployed or tested first. I'd say, this is something interesting to keep in mind. Like AI as well, right? Many papers, let's say nowadays we have LLMs, right? Which is also something fascinating, is these large language models. And then it was just a matter of perhaps months so that people will implement it and test it in practice. So I guess this is really interesting. And another type of research is, let's say, okay, something is deployed, right? And then what actually is going on there? So basically, we can analyze these data, right? That is being generated through transactions, contracts being triggered, and even trying to understand the users or at least accounts behavior, right? For many reasons. Let's say you have a blockchain project, and then you want to understand what are the things you should focus on to attract more users, to make those users stay in your platform, to incentivize people to deploy dApps on your platform, and which dApps should you actually focus on such that you attract more users. So yeah, these are kind of analysis, let's say post implementation, that is also interesting. So I see this with really good eyes, it's like this is really a beautiful thing, to be honest.
I know that at ETC in Brussels previous year, you had a talk about the
Yeah.
challenges of airdrops for the companies and how they work in terms of organization and in terms of all these processes.
Yeah, sure. So the thing is, as a researcher, we like asking the right questions and trying, and basically we use scientific methodology to come up with an understanding with any phenomena, and then we can understand and propose some changes, right? And also ensure whether this thing is working or not in practice, right? Or at least as people were expecting to. We had this beautiful idea to basically explore whether airdrops were actually working in practice and how would we do that. So first, okay, we come up with 3 goals that usually platforms they have in mind whenever they want to launch an airdrop, which is essentially to attract users, right, to their platform, right? So any platform wants more users, right? Theoretically, these airdrops would be a good way to incentivize users to onboard in our platform. The second goal is to foster long-term involvement, because it doesn't matter if users come and they leave, right? You want them to stay.
In most
In order to
cases.
Exactly. So in order to do so, you have to provide some incentives, or of course, right? And understand what they are actually doing. So third and also not least goal is regarding targeting value creating users. as known as developers, because you need people to come to your blockchain or your project and start developing new projects there. Let's say in a blockchain project, you want people to deploy DXs, you want people to deploy lending protocols, whatever, name it. So the thing is, if you have that, you are gonna, by consequence, have more users. And by have more users, you attract more developers and so on and so forth. And then basically in this paper, we were asking whether these platforms, by conducting an airdrop, whether they were actually or not achieving these goals. In the paper, we showed through, of course, as well as qualitative analysis, that is not entirely the case. Even platforms, without conducting an airdrop, they were onboarding users because another platform was conducting an airdrop. Because let's keep in mind that there are a lot of users playing this game to increase their chances to get as much as tokens they could through an airdrop, right?
Farmers,
Yeah, and then imagine these airdrop farmers, right? It's like those are really professional people who have a lot of resources. Can be financial, it can be even
accounts and people working with them in one team.
Exactly. So the thing is, those people are playing the game. And I'd say that, of course, there are many incentives to increase the amount of tokens they get, such that, it translates to some financial incentive, money, right, in the end. And of course, we also have normal users basically doing some activities on chain in expectation so that they can get something. Let's assume those users, okay, they can increase their chances to get a high stake in the airdrop, but nothing is compared with those professional airdrop farmers. So this is one thing that we noticed, that there are a lot of accounts playing these games, and basically what they do is that there is this common assumption that one platform in the past that conduct an airdrop, right, they pick some selection criteria, some features or characteristics that they are gonna use in order to know who is gonna get how, in terms of the proportion of the airdrop.
Eligible or eligible.
Exactly. So new platforms that eventually will conduct an airdrop. So what people do, they jump in and start generating this, in quotation here, fake activities, right, by some definition, in the expectations to get an airdrop. So the thing is, people are basically changing platforms just so they can get tokens from many platforms, right? This is a game. And the thing is, one thing we notice is that as soon as these platforms conduct the airdrop, most of these accounts, they are gonna sell these tokens right away with 1 or 2 hops distance in terms of a graph network, which basically means that, hey, they are basically getting these tokens, selling it, and jump off and going to play the game in another platform. So this is really bad to the ecosystem, to the platform, as well as to the real users, the ones that should actually be incentivized to stay, right? Not bot accounts, right? And this is something really critical. And in the paper, we also disclosed some pitfalls which were regarding to airdrop farming, as I basically mentioned and you commented really well. The issue regarding the decentralized governance, because usually, traditionally, projects, they launch their tokens and they have their decentralized governance. So it's like those two things, those two goals are connected to each other, right? You cannot vote without tokens, right? In this one token, one vote, one token, one vote style. So imagine then you give most of these tokens to some, let's say, few accounts. In the end of the day, you are giving them voting power, decision-making power in your own system, which also translates to some issues that I show in another paper regarding to the token concentration, where only a few participants dictates the rules of on the governance, right? They can propose, they can change, they can pass anything because they are the most powerful ones. How to solve these things? Of course, I'm just mentioning briefly things here, but feel free, guys, to check the paper in details if you want. What could be done in order to try to mitigate this issue? Let's say you can come up with a novel selection criteria, and you should so, because farmers, they are expecting that you are using some selection criteria, right? But as soon as you come up with something new, which is unpredicted, then they might be, let's say, they might not get what they were wanting to. Why? Because they did not included that selection criteria. For instance, Celestia used the GitHub contributions. It was really good. But then afterwards, everyone also started to play the games and making comments on the GitHub. MetaLab, ZKsync, they used value scaling, which basically translates in a really simple words here. The value that you bring to the chain, I mean, the amount of money or tokens you bridge from the R1 to ZKsync, right? Of course, it's more complex than that. So it's a novel selection criteria, right? Everything has their pros and cons, and it's up to the protocol, to the researchers working in that company, as well as the developers, analytics people, to understand which things, because there is also a trade-off, which things they want to consider. Because if you label, let's say in a CBIL detection mechanism, if you label a real user as a CBIL, it's really worse than labeling a CBIL as a real account, right? So let's keep that in
Yeah.
mind.
Yeah. I agree with you. And thanks for great explanation and sharing your idea. When we use some products in our daily life, we don't have any payments from the companies or from the brands we use. Like you bought this t-shirt and that's all. In blockchain, we have lack of users. That's why blockchain protocols baked by VCs give away some amount of their money tokens to like incentivize and to motivate people use their blockchain to build something on them and have more increased activity. So what do you think we'll have in near future with all these airdrops?
I'd say that airdrops will still be the thing for Web3, but of course, it might be, we should carefully think about the airdrop designs. For instance, imagine in the case of a rollup, you could perhaps, instead of risking giving these tokens to CBILs, you could perhaps select some projects in your platform and giving them some tokens so that they can hire engineers, researchers, developers, so that they can improve their product and by consequence also improve your ecosystem, right? This is one thing. In the case of rollups, you could also give some people some fees discounts or fees refunding, right? Because then in order to use their tokens that they got, they would need to reuse the platform, right? So this might be something to think about. Yeah, there might be other ways as well. For instance, let's say you have some grant for anyone who wants to build on your platform, will get some tokens such that they can hire developers as well. Now I'm talking about brand new startups, let's say. It's like, giving some money to someone to try out their idea and they of course are gonna need to deploy on your chain, right? It's like whenever you get some funding from some whatever VCs or even let's say Microsoft, just some example here, might not be accurate though. They of course they would incentivize those new startups to use their product, right? Microsoft Azure platform and so on and so forth. In the end of the day, whenever the company, the startup grows, they are gonna need to pay for those services, which means that they are going to still continue to use Microsoft because to change it, it will be not so
Yeah, it's very
incentivized, right?
difficult and yeah.
Exactly. So in the Web3, I guess, of course, having multi-round in airdrop is really interesting because then you can iterate and correct some past mistakes. Second, ensure who are the top depths in your platform and reward them accordingly so that they can grow. And secondly, try to onboard more platforms by actually giving some people tokens. You can have some whatever hackathon and then you give them these tokens as well. So this might be something, or even fees discounts as well in the case of rollups. So that's how I would see these airdrops continuing over time. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So, what do you think about mass adoption? When we should expect it? And what do you think about this like famous phrase about next billion users on chain? So, is it notorious or is it real? Or yeah, what do you think?
I'd say there are, okay, first of all, this will be a beautiful thing to happen. Of course, maybe the things we have nowadays, the technology we have nowadays, is not would not perhaps be able to accommodate all these users now. But I hope in the near future, probably in 3 years, 4 years, who knows, this is gonna be a reality. Why mass adoption is interesting? Because remember what we mentioned about those people that, I mean, more than a billion, they do not have access to financial banking, right? So then imagine now they get to know about the blockchain technology and now they are part of the system. They can transact. And one thing I have to mention is that although there are a lot of solutions already implemented, that, let's say these roll-ups, right? It's a beautiful concept that basically helps scaling these blockchains, right? And also at the same time heritaging this security layer as well from the L1, let's say in the case of Ethereum, right? This is beautiful. However, I mean, we also have a paper on that. We analyzed the boom of inscriptions. These were a lot of transactions being issued. Let's say more than 5 million in a period of 1 hour, which is a lot of transactions. Those corresponded to, for some roll-ups, around 96% of all their transactions. What happened then? By the way, this is a talk I gave at the Ethereum Zurich about this paper of mine on the inscriptions boom. It's also available on my website. So the thing is, this can be seen as the first stress test those roll-ups had. And what happened in practice then? With this high flux of transactions, many roll-ups, they suffered from downtime or they suffered from some instabilities, which means that imagining, of course, tomorrow everyone wants to use blockchains. Probably the resources allocated in terms of computer resources are not so well prepared to accommodate these 1 million people. And remember that we are talking about humans, people, right? But imagining we might have devices, AI systems, also issuing these transactions, which can be perhaps a billion transactions, So of course, there are a lot of solutions, elastic chains, layer trees, I don't know, every protocol calls it differently, but this is something really beautiful and we are in the right path. But we might not be ready today, but pretty soon, I guess. Yeah.
And how do you see this mass adoption? Like, do you expect that, for example, your mom or like your neighbor will use some the apps, or how it should look like?
Yeah, so this is a fantastic question there. I like to think about this a lot. So, and the thing is, I'd say that for us tech people or people with a background in tech or who are searching for this space, it takes a while to get to know about all these concepts, right? I guess the best technology for mass adoption is the one that people don't even need to understand what is going on, but they can easily use. Let's say AI. I mean, of course, everyone now knows a little bit what is AI, but of course, they have their own definition, might not be accurate, but they know that they have AI on their phone, on their computer. Whenever you get on a plane, the plane is flying itself, right? So
Yeah.
people have some notion and they trust with some definition of trust. I'd say that for us in our ecosystem, we need to come up with better user experience and of course UIs that basically are well taught for people that have no prior knowledge of what it's a blockchain. For instance, imagining wallet softwares. Oh my gosh, I have to install this in browser. Is that safe or not? It's like, oh, I'm gonna sign this transaction. What is actually this transaction doing? I like thinking about my parents or my mom or whatever, It's like, would she be able to understand what is actually going on there? If she
Yeah.
signed a transaction, which guarantee does she have that this transaction is doing what actually she was expecting it to do? So I guess it's not so well transparent. And we need to ensure for this mass adoption, I'm thinking about everyone, not only us, right? We need to ensure these things there are more explainabilities, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, so this is key, I'd say.
What ethical considerations should blockchain researchers keep in mind?
Why I'm smiling here is because the top computer science venues nowadays, they also require you to disclose any ethical considerations in your paper. And the reason why I find it really important is the following. Let me give you an example. Let's suppose a security researcher found a vulnerability, a breach, or anything that could happen with a protocol. And then this person basically write a paper, push it on archives, submit it elsewhere, whatever, or even talk about it online or write a report at least, just, to stamp the idea that he or she was the first one to discover this thing, right? Because there is some reputation as well, right?
Yeah.
Think about the users of that protocol. They might suffer a lot. Even the protocol, maybe the protocol might no longer exist, right? Because once users lose their faith, that's done, right? There is nothing you can do. So before doing, when a serious researcher, let's say a security researcher in our example, found some vulnerability, the ethical consideration is first, you should tell the parties involved. Let's say a protocol. Tell them, hey, I found this, I wrote this paper, give it a read, feel free to get in touch with me, and have it fixed, because I'm gonna publish this paper. So basically, you give them enough time so that they can counter-react, such that you don't hurt users with your discovery. And then, once they basically address it, it's also going to be a really paragraph in your paper mentioning, hey, I got in touch with these people, they had it fixed, now this vulnerability is no longer available, but then this is also a contribution, right? And then you have it published. You can publish it in a scientific venue. You can publish it on archive. Then this is a really good example of ethical consideration that any researcher should have.
Yeah, I agree with you. And actually, there could be one more part. Potential hackers, I'm sure they read and learn. And so they can extrapolate, for example, not for this protocol, but for similar, and use the same vulnerability to hack another one. So that's why it's like a balance between being famous and to care about the people involved in this.
Yeah, this is really well said. Whenever any project in our ecosystem is damaged, actually, you are damaging the whole ecosystem at least by some small portion. And think about others that do not understand what was going on. They will basically say that, hey, blockchain, I cannot trust these things, I'm gonna lose money. But it's not the reality. But we need to ensure that everything works as it should, right? Because if some project crashes, for sure, this will affect more than that project and their own users, right? So this is something that is really important to ensure that whenever someone finds a vulnerability, it gets fixed. But regarding what you said, this is really something interesting that I didn't think about it, because that vulnerability might also be available in another project. Then things get scary, right?
Let's imagine that you can solve one major problem in the blockchain space just today, for example, or during this week.
Okay, so I can mention at least two, but I can comment on one. So the first one, we discussed it already regarding the usability, right? The explainability for non-tech people so that they can understand and onboard, right? Of course, then it's like a 1.2 here, which would be the scalability as well, because we need blockchains to scale. Even nowadays, that since we are having these AI systems using the blockchain as well, of course, we have ZKML, which is zero knowledge machine learning, or PML, so that you can verify that input provide to that specific model, provide that output that actually belong to that model, actually came from that model, giving that input, which is a beautiful concept. Yeah, so scalability, usability, and one thing that people usually forget thinking about is regarding fairness. Let's say fairness with respect to decentralized governance systems, where we need to ensure that actually, since these systems should be decentralized, we should ensure that the voting power is not concentrated, because then there is no decentralization there. And by giving people voice, even small players, this will be something interesting. But of course, it has a lot of implications, and it's not an easy task, because there is always a trade-off. Then, yeah, so those are kind of the three things. But nowadays, UX, UI, explainability for users so that they can understand what is, understand not in details, tech details, but, actually in a interface level, what is actually going on.
Thank you. So, what can you recommend to people who are about to start their research career? Like, where to start?
Yeah, so research, it can be for Web3, AI, distributed systems, it can be to anything, even social sciences, The thing is, find a good place where you can do a PhD. And more important than the place, find a really good advisor who is going to support you towards your PhD. Because, for instance, at the MPI, SWS, Max Planck Institute, where I got my PhD from in computer science. By the way, I have a BSc, master's, and PhD in computer science. I love this area. So the thing is, more important than the institution actually is your advisor, because he or she is the one who is going to give you all the support so that you can conclude your PhD. And for instance, here at the NPI and most places in the US, we have such a long PhD, which is, let's say, 6 years, 7 years PhD. So keep that in mind. If you are going to spend 6 years of your life working towards something, you should choose wisely the person who is going to be your manager, let's say. So this is important, because if you give up it happens. If you give up, you cannot go to another place and basically reuse everything that you did, right? As in a company. No, it's like you cannot do that. You have to restart. So choose it wisely. And regarding Web3, for instance, I got to know more about this space once I started my PhD. Then I was the first, at that time, PhD student on my institute working with blockchains. I started with Bitcoin, then Ethereum, and all this amazing Web3 ecosystem. The thing is, you can surf about it online as well. YouTube, there are plenty of lectures from many places. So just get the top ones, let's say top institutions for blockchains, and then search for them on YouTube. There is a MOOC, it's called DeFi MOOC. It's one of the organizers here is Artur Java, which is a top and great researcher. So keep that in mind. They discuss a lot of things. There are a bunch of lectures. I guess this will give you some idea what you are gonna learn and what things you could specialize as well. And also read papers, scientific papers. Since you are gonna become a researcher, if you want to, you need to read research papers. Of course, there will be a lot of technical papers on archive as well, but focus as well on scientific papers. Those are really, really well written with a really good methodology and validation. It was peer reviewed, so you can trust those papers. But yeah, so that's my let's say my tip. I'd say yeah.
Yeah.
By the way, also do not hesitate to reach out to people that let's say you read someone's paper and you like the paper and you are interested to work on that domain. So reach out to that researcher. So basically, that person can give you a really good guideline so that you can start work on those things as well, or even become a collaborator or become a PhD student of that top researcher. So keep that in mind. This is really important.
Yeah, thank you very much for great advice. Please share your tips how to make this connection between you and your audience and how to present complex tech theories or concepts in more humanized and more understandable way.
Yeah, thank you so much, by the way. I really appreciate it. The thing is, when let's say I have a paper, right? And then I wrote this paper. So basically, yeah, I have a deep knowledge about it, right? And the question is, how can I convey this message so that anyone, doesn't matter. Let's say I go to an industrial venue, which basically you have people from a lot of backgrounds, different backgrounds, right? It's not researchers only. There will be engineers, there will be developers, there will be designers, there will be many interesting people, law people, right? Lawyers. It's like, economics. So the thing is, how can we ensure that everyone is going to understand? So at least what works for me, this is my style. I don't know what people think about it. So the thing is, I have everything in my mind, but the thing is, when I'm building my slides, since from the scratch, pretend I'm presenting this topic to the audience right away. I have no slides, I have just draft, I start drafting, hey, I can talk about these things, but then I can go technical and mention this word. Hey, but wait a sec. People are not going to understand this. What if I basically use another concept that people would easily understand? So basically, I start switching these things. And on my slides, I like adding sometimes questions as well, because, my guideline is introduction, problem, motivation, why this matter, right? How I solve these things, my methodology, right? And then conclusion, I mean, this is really interesting. And the most important slide for me, at least, is my last one, where I basically talk about future research, where I have a bunch of research questions that I didn't solve with them, but anyone would be able to start and trying to solve those things. So that's really interesting, right? And then as a no English native speaker, I mean, my mother tongue is Portuguese. I'm Brazilian, by the way, but I also speak a little bit of German. But in English, I consider that, I do speak a little bit well, but as a no English native speaker, I really need to ensure my slides are really well done. I spend a lot of time building animations as well, ensuring that I use the right text. I'm more a visual guy, so I add a lot of interesting visualizations as well. So I guess with that, people understand it, and I like talking to the people as I talk to my colleagues. It's not like feeling a lot of pressure, this makes all the difference, like your mindset. So keep in mind that whenever you are present something, you are the one who most know about that things. Rest assured, people will understand and don't need to be heroes. You are gonna be fine. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for your recommendations. Some topics are so technical, they are so difficult to understand, and they even make it more difficult with these very boring presentations and all these formulas and all these things that you can, like, oh my god, guys, like it's super hard. So can you please make it like more fun or more understandable for wider audience, not for all these like three guys in the first row? I was listening your speech here in Brussels and I really like it. I want to ask you for more advice. So can you please recommend some resources or maybe mentorship programs or event for those who want to learn in general about cryptography, about decentralized technologies, architecture of products?
Let's say if you are a master's PhD student wanting to get to know more about this space, go to scientific venues, for instance, FC, Financial Cryptography and Data Security, which is really an amazing event where you're going to get to know about of research in many different Web3 topics. AFT as well, Advances of Financial Technologies, if you want to learn more about DeFi in general, and there are many others. For instance, there are some retreat events organized by the IC3 team as well. So keep that in mind. This is really amazing. Regarding industrial venue, let's say you don't want to do any research, whatever, but even though you can attend those, for instance, SPC, the Science of Blockchain Conference, which is really a nice one where a lot of researchers present their work there, but you have a lot of engineers, developers, and a lot of side events. There are industrial events. For instance, IFCC is an amazing event. It's like you get everyone together, even if you want to start, you have some idea, you want to recruit people, to work on your startup, you want to find collaborators. They're going to be the best place because you have most of the people there. They are going to be there. You need a designer, there will be designer. You need a lawyer, there gonna be a lawyer. You need whatever, a researcher, engineer, developer, name it. It's really an amazing. And all of them are gonna present at least something. And it's really an amazing opportunity. Another one that I attended last month, so it was in January this year, was Ethereum Zurich, which was my first time attending there. It was really good as well. I gave a talk there regarding the inscriptions, right? There is Yves Vassov as well, right, Daria? So this is
Yeah,
another one.
I'll be happy to have you on site this year because, yeah, we need more people like you.
Yeah, definitely. And other than that, you have this DeFi MOOC. For instance, one of the people behind that, to the best of my knowledge, is Artur Java, but there are a lot of top researchers as well, where you have lectures, that you can basically, it's everything available on YouTube. Doesn't matter if you are a researcher, if you are a developer, if you are a designer, doesn't matter, if you want to basically just dig to understand a bit more of these things, it's a really excellent opportunity. And for those who are more, I don't know, who wants things faster, you can have just a high level idea using even LLMs nowadays. It's pretty okay, but of course, don't rely much. Trust, but verify, right? So yeah, so that's the thing.
Yeah, thank you very much. So, Johnnatan, it was amazing conversation. It was really insightful, and for me, and I'm sure for our listeners. Yeah, guys. So I'll leave all the links Johnnatan mentioned under this video, so you can check everything, follow him. Yeah, and read all this research, pieces of research and documentations. Thanks everyone for your attention, and see you next time.
Thank you. Bye.